and the pursuit of truth and common sense in an unbelievable world. You're listening to the Right Mind podcast with your host, Todd Schowalter.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Right Mind. I am your host, Todd Schowalter. Today, I am with Katie. Can you pronounce your last name for me? I'm sorry.
Bjärgvide.
Okay, and you're from Sweden, correct?
I'm living in Sweden, but I'm from Utah.
You're from Utah. Okay, well, tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would.
Yes. So I have been living in Sweden for about 4-ish years. I met my Swedish husband in Germany. We were traveling with a Christian theater company. We traveled to 26 different countries and performed in 4 different languages. And now we're living here, and my husband is studying, and I'm a YouTuber.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, one of the things, I don't know if you're familiar too much with our show, I'm always looking for the truth on Right Mind. We're looking for the objective. What out there? How can we get away from the liberal and conservative? Those narratives as far as the labels that we have, and get to the crux of what is really the truth. Tell us a little bit about. I've been to your YouTube channel, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But tell us a little bit about what your passions are, and tell us a little bit about your channel.
Yeah. Well, I am so with you in that, looking for truth beyond the labels, and that I'm such a believer of compassion, empathy. There's so much demonizing of people going on. And especially people use those titles of liberal and conservative as derogatory terms,
right?
And they immediately write someone off of, oh, you're this, I'm not going to listen to you anymore. And
right.
You're obviously on the wrong side. And it's just so sad that that's happened. Like, people are people, and they have stories. And if we would listen to their stories, we could care about them and love them and see that they are as much deserving of love and respect as you are.
Exactly. So we would all get along, so to speak, more than we are now. In my opinion, and I've stated it pretty openly, I believe that politics plays a huge part, if not the part, in dividing us, along with the media. There seems to be this narrative going on that they want us divided, in my opinion, in order to control us. I don't think if you get down, as you mentioned, the crux of it, I don't think any of us are too far apart. I think a lot of the spin that goes on is more hype than truth. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, are you familiar with David Hoffman?
Sounds familiar.
He is a filmmaker, and he uploads clips of actual history that has been recorded from the 1960s on up to the 80s. And he uploaded a fascinating video recently of people going out with their 16mm cameras, interviewing that silent majority that the president was talking about. I can't remember which president it was, but he was saying the silent majority believes in the Vietnam War and believes in patriotism and all this good stuff. But when they actually interviewed the people, they all had their own opinions that didn't necessarily match up with that. And I feel like the Vietnam War was a huge, huge time of reckoning for American people, to think like, before, you did not question authority. You just went along with it. If anyone was in any authority over you, they must be right. And when this happened, people were like, wait, I don't know if we can trust the government, actually. And this was so mind-boggling to so many of them.
Well, and to go off of that, you mentioned the Vietnam War. A lot of we're having even right now with a lot of these mask issues and things like that. I don't know how things are in Sweden at this point, but you almost have a reversal. It used to be back in the 60s with the Vietnam War, we had the liberal cause. It was we don't trust authority, we're against authority, and now you almost have that flip-flop. They've turned the page to where it seems that you have a lot of conservatives if you want to use that label, that are coming out. Well, we don't want the government to tell us what to do. We're not going to wear those masks. We're not going to do that. I mean, so but you at the same time, where I'm going is, it seems that the liberal community here is embracing a lot of what the government is telling them, as opposed to what they were doing in the 60s. And this is in the United States, of course. And now you have the typical conservative, people that go along with the crowd saying, hey, we're not going to do this anymore. We don't believe in this. I mean, do you see the reversal? Do you see how that flip that's happened here?
I do recognize that. But what seems to me is that the liberal side of not fighting the masks is showing more love and compassion. It's like, however the effectiveness of them is, I know so many people who have chronic diseases, who are very much in the side of, they don't think that they would survive this. And it's just so much more showing compassion. It's like, it's not just about you. They think of how it makes other people feel, to think that no one is taking it seriously and no one cares whether they live or die, when they don't have a choice of having to work to survive. It's the hills that people choose to die on that doesn't really hurt them, but just makes them look mean and arrogant, and it's really hard. You know what I mean? Am I communicating anything?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. I think one of the problems, and I think when you get down to it, and again, as people as a whole, I think everybody, regardless of who you are, or what your background or your affiliation or your beliefs, I don't think when it comes right down to it, anybody wants to hurt anybody else, and everybody wants everybody to be healthy. And I would be probably one of the last people in a million years that would ever say, if there was something that I could personally do that was going to keep me from getting you sick, I would do that. And I think that, is pretty much how the majority of people think. I think what we're having here, though, and again, I'm not really sure how it is in Sweden at this point. Now we have the vaccine coming out. There were certain types of benchmarks and things like that we needed to achieve. And it seems like we're putting certain things in place that's really not protecting anyone, but they seem more as controlling measures, just to see how far we can go without people pushing back a little bit. Because I'm all for it. I agree totally. If there's something that we can do to keep people safe, to keep people healthy, hey, I'm all for it, 100%. I'm a father, I'm a husband. I mean, I don't want anybody to get sick. I have elderly relatives. Everybody wants everybody to be healthy. I think that especially right here, though, regardless of where you stand politically, some of those things are being used as control points rather than what they should actually be used for. I don't know if they're actually being used for health reasons, as opposed to more control reasons. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, that totally makes sense. And I can tell you what my experience of living in Sweden's been like. We've never had any mask mandates or any kind of lockdowns at all. There have been a lot of measures put in place, like we don't go into the kids' daycare. We drop them off outside. There's hand sanitizer stations everywhere. Lots of people didn't wear masks up until a few months ago, and then they started becoming a lot more normal. But for the most part, it was, if you felt sick, any kind of sickness, you just stayed home. And right. So people just did not see their elderly family members and their compromised, what's the word? Something compromised. Immunocompromised
communities. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there were some places, like, I'm really, really glad we were on this, where I live on an island of Sweden called Gotland.
Right.
And things did not do great on the mainland. And then people thought later, oh, maybe we should have locked down. Maybe we should have done this.
Right.
But we didn't get hit too hard over here.
Okay, well, that's kind of ironic, don't you think? I mean, you had lesser restrictions and things like that, yet you weren't as affected as much. Don't you find that kind of interesting? I mean, ironic?
Yeah, it is interesting. I don't know how much helped being isolated. Like, yeah, things were pretty bad on the mainland, especially in Stockholm, where there was a lot more people. Like, and the Swedish mentality is very different from the American mentality in a lot of ways, but especially in personal space. Like,
Right,
Swedes are all about their personal space.
right,
So it worked. There's a lot more space on this island to stay away from people. And there's no more than 2 lanes of traffic over here. Like, it's small by
right,
American
right.
standards. Not like by island standards, but by American standards, this entire place is 3 hours top to bottom.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I guess let me ask you this, even, kind of feeding off that. I think we're not going to use labels here if we can avoid it. But if we were to look at on the political scheme of things, you would, in your opinion, correct, lean more left than right, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you would identify more as someone on the liberal left side, correct?
Insofar as it's about treating people with compassion and respect, which the right-leaning people are not very often very good at acknowledging the existence of trans people, for example, or the
Right.
validity of gay marriage.
Right. Well, okay. Going back, I mean, what I was going with there originally, I mean, I am more on the conservative right side. You are on the liberal, more on the liberal left side. But here you and I are having a very polite, nice conversation. Why? And I don't have any desire to do anything otherwise. Why do you think that there is, why is it portrayed that there's all this animosity, all this division, when in all reality, that people, you and I have never met before. We have totally different backgrounds, okay? You have different beliefs than I do, but here we are having a normal, civil conversation. Why can't that happen in our government? Why can't that happen? Why can't the media show that, in your opinion?
Well, I think that it's just really, really difficult for people to listen to each other. It's, I there's a lot of pain and a lot of suffering that some people seem to just want to shove under the rug, like the reality of the systematic racism that is inherent in the country, like the fact that slavery didn't end, it just got rebranded into a prison system. There's so many things, and some people have this feeling of, until the pain that is inside of my spirit can be acknowledged, I don't feel like you really care to listen to me.
Right. We brought that up on an earlier show. It was also just about critical race theory. It was more leaning towards that and systemic racism. We touched on this also, but do you think, and again, I brought up on the last show, I mean, I think racism is horrible. I think it's one of the, not only, I mean, I hate the word itself, racism. One of the things I see happening seems to be, though, that we're not really getting rid of it. We're pushing it off on another race that we can blame now, rather than getting rid of it altogether, rather than bring everybody up to the same level. It seems that we're in a situation now that rather than trying to do that and work together, we're actually now we're looking at another race and we're trying to bring it down. And we're going to say, well, they're to blame. They're going to pay for all this. Well, why, in your opinion, why can't we just raise all of us, each other up? Why do we still have to go out and bring another one down? Because to me, and I mentioned this last time, two wrongs do not make a right. I mean, why is it that we have to go after and go? I mean, some of these, for example, those white children in the classroom that are being told that they should feel horrible about themselves. That's just as bad as the Jim Crow era, going back to what we did to the African Americans, the blacks. I mean, why can't we just all get along rather than having to have one group that we have to tear down?
I was an actor for many years, and we did this play for children. Yeah. And we did this play for children that had this really deep line in it that said, "A wrong hangs in the air until it is forgiven." And I think instead of asking these kind of questions, because like, yeah, I can see where you're coming from with these questions, but I feel like they're not in the right vein. I think that the answer is we need to have more uncomfortable conversations with people of color and say like, and just say, tell me what you feel, not just one, but many, because you can't make a monolith out of a person.
Right.
But the more we expose ourselves to the experiences of people, the more we can get a better perspective to ask the right questions. So no, I don't think that we should be tearing down white people, making white people feel bad about being white, but that's just, it's not the point.
No, I don't think it's the point at all. Actually, I think
No.
again, it makes things worse, to tell you the truth, because now you have a whole I mean, again, going back to what I was saying, I don't see why we can't just raise each other up rather than tearing each other down. I mean, I just don't see any point in it. And, again, I mean, what happened in the past was horrible. It was happening. I mean, terrible things have happened throughout history. We had, things that happened to the Jews and with the Holocaust. We had all kinds of horrible things going all throughout our history. That terrible things happen. I think, and I'm not saying one of the problems here, and this is kind of going off course, we have to remember those terrible things that happen so that they don't happen again. One thing that was happening last year, we were tearing down statues, and I'm not going to go off on a whole nother direction here, but tearing down statues, renaming buildings, things like that. But by getting rid of history, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Okay, that doesn't mean you're encouraging it to happen again if you don't remember what had happened. So there are a lot of things that I'm confused about that are happening, that I think a lot of the solutions that are being brought to do certain things are really more negative than positive. And say everything as of right now were in your lap, your hands, you had to solve it here today. What do you think? What would be your first step in trying to make things better than they are today in that whole situation?
Well, first, I just have to say something to the statue thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's history worth remembering, and there's history worth throwing away.
Right.
And KKK people are worth throwing away.
Right.
Like, that's a hill that's not worth dying on. There's much older history, much better history. Let's throw away the racist junk.
Right. Right. No, I certainly don't think it should ever be glorified in any way. No. I think one of the things, I agree with you. There's not anything that glorifies or puts something bad on a pedestal. I don't think we need that. My only, I guess, where I was going, there are certain things just in history that you don't want to forget, even if they were as bad. I mean, the horrible things happen, and by having those there as reminders, you don't want it to happen again. And I think that's. Go ahead.
Yeah. To answer your question, I'm working through that on my channel in conversations that I'm having. Like, I'm talking to people of color. I'm talking to queer people. I'm learning about their perspective so that I can know how to support them. And there's just so much history that's been swept under the rug. So the first step to tackling it is to listen.
Now, are you saying there's history in regard to sexuality, or are we talking?
Oh, yeah, there's a whole huge chunk of queer history that's just been written out. So people are like, oh, all this newfangled transgender people. Like, no, that's always existed.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, gay people have always existed. It's not this new thing in the history books. They just said they were really good friends.
Right.
Like,
right.
People have just been written out because it made certain people uncomfortable.
Sure. Well, I think that's the easy way out. I mean, you're going to have different people whether it's sexuality, whether it's color, whether it's what kind of ice cream you like. I mean, that's just human nature. It's unfortunately it's here now. You, if I may ask, you're married to.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm married to a Swede. His name is Morton.
Okay, but you still, okay, you are
LGBTQA+.
Thank you. I get them confused. I can't say it. I gotta get them mixed up in my head. I'm sorry. But okay, so what has that, what's that like? I mean, is it, what kind of lifestyle is that? Is it, I mean,
well, I'm an ally. I don't know if I would be on part of the label. I mean, I'm not completely gender conforming in the sense that I'm a lady, but I don't care about shaving my legs. There's probably people somewhere in the world that would think that I was a freak and not trying hard enough to be feminine. I don't care.
Sure.
I'm just lazy, and I have better things to do with my time.
I got
but
you.
As far as being an ally goes, I have a transgender brother, and I have a lot of family members that still call him her and sister, and it's hard. It's hard to know that people are being hurt, genuinely hurt, by having their existence denied.
Okay, well, how would you, and I'm just asking, I'm not, I don't understand it all. And that's why I'm glad we're having this conversation. One of the things, I mean, it seems to be a lot more prevalent today that you have people coming out saying, well, I'm a male, okay, or they'll say I identify as a female, vice versa, I'm female. How does that, I mean, some people say, well, you can identify, but how do you address the fact that you're not biologically different? I mean, you may have psychologically changed, but I think, how do you explain that if you're not biologically different than that, but you're psychologically different? How does that work?
Well, one aspect is to be intersex. Are you familiar with that word?
Not really, no.
To be intersex is a lot less abnormal than people think. Like, if you've met a redhead, like, they're as common as redheads. And to be intersex is to basically have both things presenting in your body, whether you're aware of it or not. I recently heard a story of a beautiful lady, 20 years old, her whole life thinking she was 100% biologically female, found out, she went to the doctor and she was 20 for something random. She has she's X and Y chromosome. She has like male organs, but they never came down. They were just kind of inside of her body.
Okay, so the actual chromosomes.
Yeah, but in her presentation, her looks, her heart, her soul, she is female.
Absolutely. Well, that makes sense. And I guess what, again, that goes with, and again, I'm just asking, I'm serious. I'm just a guy here doing my show. If biologically, I mean, that makes sense. What do you, as far as the individuals that aren't that way, that, may be, have the same chromosomes as a male or have the same chromosomes as a female, but they identify as the other. How do you, I don't know. I mean, because I see what you're saying. If you biologically, and I'm not trying to bring science all into it, I'm just trying to understand how this all works. How do you, can a person just decide, because I choose to be something else, just to be that? Or how does that work?
Are you familiar with the concept of dysphoria?
No, I'm not. And that's why I'm glad you're explaining a lot to it. And I'm sure half the people listening don't know that either. Anything you bring up, I'd love to hear more about.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Dysphoria is a real and painful, heartbreaking thing that trans people go through, where they feel completely a certain way, but what they see in the mirror does not match up to what they feel. Okay. They feel a revulsion sometimes to their organs that don't match what they really feel to be in their hearts.
Okay.
And I am not an expert on these things. I'd love to recommend watching a video I made for the Trans Day of Visibility. Maybe I can share a link for that. You could put in the description.
Absolutely, yeah. We'd like to, and I want you to promote your show as much as you like. Yeah.
in the video, there's a trans woman named Kate, and I found her channel. I was still really on the fence because I did grow up evangelical Christian. I had a really hard time coming to terms with accepting my brother, where I felt like I couldn't say girl pronouns because I didn't want to cause pain, but I felt like I couldn't say male pronouns either because what if I'm like hurting God's feelings by saying that God made a mistake? But slowly over years, this took like 8 years for me to get to where I've landed now.
Mhm.
I watched, and one of the things that helped was watching one of Kate's videos talking about how she pushed off knowing that she was a woman, but living her truth
Now,
until
Kate is
she
you,
couldn't.
correct? You're Kate, right? So,
But I'm talking about a woman named Kate Madden.
gotcha. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Backtrack.
No
Okay.
worries.
Yeah.
Yeah. That she didn't begin to transition until she felt like she couldn't breathe anymore. Like this is not like, oh, it would be cool to be a boy. Oh, it'd be cool to be a girl. This is a pain that goes so deep in the core of who a person is that they cannot, even if it risks losing everything. Like she had a big house, children, a marriage, a good career, but she had to be willing to lose everything to be able to live as she truly is. So it's not a willy-nilly decision. It's extremely heartbreaking. And people wouldn't do it if they didn't feel like they had to, you know?
Oh, I'm
It's like
sure. I'm sure.
people who get mad at refugees, like, let's just, okay, they were in a war situation, fearing for their children's life. They didn't come to your country for vacation. They left escaping their lives. And that's how it is for trans people.
So I mean, and that makes sense. I mean, if you're living, you know, if you know, it must be torment. I mean, it must be horrible to be, you know, actually living is something that you're not. I'm trying to, you know, I guess where we're going is you have, and you explain that, and that, you know, and that's a very, yeah, I could see, I sympathize with that. I don't know if sympathy is the word I should be using, but I think what you have, and I see this a lot, and I see it, you know, across the board. A lot of people are just, you know, black, white, there's no gray, you know what I mean? And a lot of people are so stuck in their own heads, you know what I mean? I think, you know, I think one of the things that we could look at, not only in this situation, but the political climate, everything going on, is, you know, if you were, and one thing I'd like to do is, what if you had to take the other side in an argument? How would you go about doing that? Just to see the other person's point of view. And I don't think we're doing that like here, not only in our country, but, you know, around the world. I mean, everybody has their own preset, you know, ideas about what is right and what is wrong. And they jump to conclusions and they jump to what the answer is before they know the whole story. What you're talking about here right now, I mean, that makes, yeah, I wasn't aware of all that. Do you see, I mean, how could you expand that further to other things so that we could all get along better?
First off, I just really want to say I so appreciate your listening. The world needs more people willing to listen and have sympathy for what they can't understand and can't possibly fathom feeling themselves. So thank you. I just want to hug you.
Oh, well, I think we all could hug. I think everybody wants to hug each other. I think there are other outside factors that don't want us to. I don't know if you heard one of my other shows, but I brought up a thing about red ants. And red ants, if you put them in a jar with black ants, they'll live together. And even though red ants are like fire ants or whatever, they'll get along and get along. But if you shake that jar, and the ants are all bouncing around, all of a sudden now they want to kill each other. And my question on an earlier show was, who is it rather that is shaking our jar? I think everybody deep down does want to get along. I think everybody, you know, wants to be happy. You know, we all want to be neighbors, but I think you have outside factors that for one reason or not, and I don't think it's good, are out there shaking the jar. And what I'm trying to do here again is bring that to the forefront, that we don't hate each other. We may disagree on things, you may like a certain type of music and I like a different type of music. That doesn't mean we hate each other. I mean, there's no reason why we can't get along.
Yeah, really, like you're to have that mindset that you have of being willing to listen, to stand up for people who are being oppressed, whether you agree with it or not. Like, gay people have the right to be married, trans people have the right to exist. And when you see other people having poisonous attitudes and being hurtful to them, where they can hear it, or even if they can't hear it, even if a person in the alphabet mafia is not around visibly, to stand up for them, because there are so many people who are raised to think that what they are is disgusting. To be attracted to someone of the same sex, to feel like I really want to wear dresses, I really want to wear makeup and be pretty, they're so deep inside of the closet of their heart that they don't feel like they could ever come out. So anytime homophobic or transphobic things are said, it just buries them in deeper.
Well, do you think if we were to turn that around based on what you just said, and are there certain things that the more left-leaning, more liberal-leaning population, do you think that there are things that they could adjust to accept by the other side as well? Because I agree, there are certain things that there shouldn't be division there. And
Yeah.
do you think there are things that the left that they find deplorable and horrible and things like that? Do you think that maybe that they're not getting the full story, and maybe there are things that they could understand and live with better if they knew the whole 100% of it?
I think that they can definitely be willing to listen and not just judge someone based on their label. Absolutely. And be willing to have a conversation like this and say, hey, let's keep this civil. Let's just talk about what our priorities are. Let's talk about what our goals are. Let's figure out where we are on the same page. It's really hard for people, especially people, LGBTQ people, when they think, okay, you are voting conservative, so you're voting against my right to exist. Do you see? It's not just like let's all just get along. But if a person's actively voting to say, like, there shouldn't be any trans people in the military, you shouldn't be allowed to be married. It's like, this isn't just about pushing this under the rug. I feel I have to defend who I am. I have to defend who I'm married to stay married to them.
Sure, I understand. I'm just saying, there's certain, I think there's some, it's like in a good relationship, there's compromise. I think if there's, compromise from each side.
There's things you can compromise on, and then there's things that you can't.
Right.
It's like a person's right to exist and be with the person they love is not something that can be compromised about.
Oh, no. You're right. No, I agree. There are certain things. You could take, a whole nother show we could talk about. I think you should come back. We should do another one. You have the whole thing about pro-life and pro-choice. That, obviously is a very divisive topic between the left and the right. And can there ever be a compromise on that? I don't know. But I do know this, Kate. We are down to our last minute here. This has been a great show. I hope you will come back, because I've really enjoyed it. But in this last 60 seconds, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your show and where we can find it? And
yes.
Go ahead.
My YouTube channel is called Epic Kate Bjärgvide. But if you just search Epic Kate, you'll find me, and I'm sure I'll put a link down below.
I'll put a link.
I have conversations about all kinds of things. I love to talk to creative people. I've got a bunch of legendary rock stars coming up. Like, what? How did this happen?
Wow, neat. Okay.
I recently talked to a guy, Scott Page, who's been with Pink Floyd and Toto.
Wow.
So I've got a bunch of creatives people that I'm actually going to help promoting. And I've got a bunch of people having really tough conversations, deconstructing evangelicalism, talking about fear-motivated religion, white Jesus, the colonization of religion.
So a wide variety of topics. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then, we'll do the link. But once again, what was the title of it again?
The channel is Epic Kate.
Epic Kate. I think if we just search that, and we'll put a link up, but if you search for Epic Kate on YouTube, you'll find her. Well, that's about all the time that we have, Kate, but I want to thank you very much for being on Right Mind. I hope you'll join us again, and I wish you the best. And again, thank you. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Talk to you very soon. Take care, Kate.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Bye.
This has been the Right Mind Podcast with Todd Schowalter.